Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media Group, and tonight we're on the our Pastor's Corner channel and community organizations because this gentleman he meets both of those qualifications, and we'll be running them on this interview on both of our channels. We have Pastor Stephen Jones as our guest tonight, and without further ado, Pastor Jones.
Greetings. Good to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Hey, Pastor, will you tell our audience a little bit about you? First, tell them what's the name of your organization, and then, as I perpetually say to my guests, let's go back to kindergarten.
All right, we can do that. The name of the organization that I am connected, well, first, I'm co-pastor of First Baptist Church of Kansas City, Missouri. But I am also a leader with More Squared, and that stands for Metropolitan Organization to overcome racial and economic equity, or to establish economic equity. And it's an organization of about 35 congregations throughout the metro area on both Kansas and Missouri sides. And we work on issues on racial and economic equity. We work on local control of Kansas City, Missouri police. We work on issues of police indiscretion in Kansas City, Kansas, and in Kansas City, Missouri. We work on Medicaid expansion in Kansas. We worked hard on it in Missouri and got it finally. So those are the kinds of issues, criminal justice issues. We work very hard on releasing some of the people who've been released from jail that were charged inappropriately, and lots of issues like that. It's not a single issue kind of thing. What I'm working on now is the call of the beloved community. This little sign behind me is part of that, in resistance to white Christian nationalism. And that's why I'm with you today. Now, kindergarten, you want to know about.
Right, boy. Hey, Stephen, your brain is really working. You did all of that and then went back to what I. Oh.
Well, you caught me early in the morning. I can still think. So here we go.
Go ahead.
I grew up in a 100% white small community called Eldon, Missouri, in the center part of the state. It's near Lake of the Ozarks and near Jefferson City. And we did not have kindergarten in the schools when I was young. And my mother and two other women decided that for my sister, she's 2 years older, that they would start a private kindergarten, which had never been done in that town. And so they rented a house and had kindergarten for my sister the year following, and then for my class. And then finally they advocated and had the public schools take over kindergarten. So my memory really is of my mom and two other women teaching that kindergarten class so that we could kind of get a little head start on first grade. I grew up in Eldon all the way through. I graduated from high school. I don't really have a good explanation for why the issue of race was so important to me, but it became very important to me in high school particularly.
What high school did you go to?
Well,
give us some names.
The public high school in Eldon High School. And my folks were always more broad-minded, but never had quite the passion that I had for this. And I finally started asking around, why did the other small towns in central Missouri have historic African-American neighborhoods, and we did not? And it turns out that Eldon was formed in 1905, and the Klan was active in that area, and that's what prevented any African-Americans from living in Eldon. And I think there might be a few that live there now, but it's mostly white. We were just there with my son-in-law, who is African American, and my two granddaughters, who of course biracial, and we ate at a downtown restaurant, and many people were very friendly and very cordial to us. But there was a couple of tables where we got pretty hard stares, and I didn't get in a conversation with them, but I'm pretty sure they just hadn't seen black people in that restaurant before or very often, and so it's still a fairly conservative area of the country. But I grew up in the 60s, and the 60s, the cities were burning and Vietnam War was raging, and the issue of the civil rights were huge issues, and all those things became very important to me. And I remember going to I grew up Baptist, and I went to my pastor.
Where did you go to, if you went to college, or where did you go to seminary school?
I went to college. That's what brought me to Kansas City. I went to college at William Jewell in Liberty, and graduated from there. And then I went to seminary at Colgate Rochester Divinity School in Rochester, New York. That's also the school of Martin Luther King.
All right, that's big time there.
It is big time. In fact, I say that, and it's true that the Kenneth Smith, who was my professor of social ethics, at the end of his career, was the professor of social ethics for King at the beginning of his career. And so we had the very same professor of social ethics, although obviously decades apart.
Can you brought ethics up? Can I ask you a few things off the train tracks? Sure. About ethics right now? How do you see ethics and goes along with truthfulness in society, less more into politics? If you can speak on day-to-day relationships, because over the last 30 years, I've seen that really only way you can get ahead in life is friendship, kinship, and politics. And merit has nothing to do with it. And what comes with that is lies. And from this is Mr. Nelson's personal point of view, lies, right, deception, and manipulation, which creeps into relationships. Can you speak on that as a pastor?
Sure. Well, I think by far the majority of people still value integrity, still value ethics, still value people who have serious beliefs and live by them. But unfortunately, in the political arena, that's being less and less valued, and it's becoming more commonplace that some politicians, not all, because there's some really good politicians out there, but some politicians just lie for the sake of lying and hide behind things that are not truth. And you listen to their interview, and then afterwards they do a fact check, and they're so far off from telling the truth, and it's disturbing. And it's disturbing to me that a number of people would buy into that, would think that's okay, because I don't think that the majority of people would feel that is okay. I think the majority of people want to be around leaders, whether they're political or pastors or whatever, who tell the truth and live with lives with integrity. We've had in Kansas City just recently 2 megachurch pastors who have had to step down because of giant indiscretions with children and underage girls, and so I don't think people appreciate that nor want it, and I think most people want their leaders to have integrity.
Do you feel that you have your hand on the pulse of the total community? See, I like speaking truth to power and truth in general. Knowing if I'm white and I'm in an all-white situation, how you talk inside your community versus how you talk outside your community. It's like black people. Black people sometimes have to wear 3 faces. Who they are when they're home and around, and then as soon as they come out into outside the door, then they have to adjust. Uh, I'm not taking up for these politicians on what you pointed out, but that's where I know why they do it. They just don't do it to lie. We're living in this materialistic
Mhm.
age,
Yeah.
and uh, having a job is essential for people that are thinking
Yeah.
and and understand where the not just this country, where the world is going, and and what's happening at this present time. uh you look at the AI and all of this. It's taken human beings eons to uh change how they think and all of this. And technology is going so fast, we cannot keep up with it, and it's distorting how we're looking at life. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think anybody has to lie and misrepresent the truth in order to do their job or in order to be effective. I just don't. I don't buy into that. And I think politicians who just cannot tell the truth and be honest and face the consequences of their actions are really no different than anybody else. We all have to um, face the consequences of our actions, no matter what they are, and that's terribly important to personal integrity. And what we're doing is urging people to vote for leaders who have personal integrity, who say and do the same thing, no matter who they're with, um, who face the consequences of their actions bravely as they can, and live accordingly. So I think whether you're a businessman or a billionaire or a firefighter or a pastor or a media person, whatever you are, I think we can all go about our work with personal integrity, with honesty, with values, strong values, healthy values in place.
Talk a little bit about Morse Square. I might not be pronouncing that right, but
Are you are.
get it together for me.
Well, More Squared is an organization that it comprises about 35 congregations and then a whole group of individual members as well, and a few social organizations that aren't churches that are a part of it as well. We've been around for 20 years. Our 20th anniversary is this fall. And we focus exclusively on Kansas City Metro, both Kansas and Missouri sides. We have congregations on both sides. And we work hard for racial equity and economic equity on behalf of people of color, on behalf of poor people, making sure that our society lives up to its ideals, which it often doesn't. And so that's what we're about. And my congregation, First Baptist Church, is a part of we're a More Squared congregation, and for us, it's our primary way of working on justice issues. It's one thing to have closed closets and food pantries. We have a food pantry in our church, and I thoroughly applaud those kinds of things. But you also have to work on justice issues. You can't just work on community service projects. You also have to figure out why the system is stacked the way it is, and who's coming out on top and who's coming out on the bottom of issues. And if, for example, you have a detective in Kansas City, Kansas, who is essentially raping African American women and was able to get away from it 30 years, that's a justice issue. And you have to work on those things. You have to identify them. You have to speak the truth, even when it costs you some. And I'm proud of More Squared. We have a good track record in Kansas City and addressing issues like this.
My roommate was Alvin Sykes, and
Uh-huh.
Alvin brought a lot of light to Emmett Till and some other cases. Uh, I think I don't know whether I was talking to you last night or yesterday. I was telling some people not patting myself on the back or what have you. I have a moral compass, and a lot of us have a moral compass, but we don't uh, act on it per
Mhm.
se.
It's true.
And a lot of times uh, we'll be silent when we shouldn't be silent.
Right.
And I I'm going back to my teenage years in the '60s. There was a movie I seen. You remember how the '60s TV was fairly new.
Yeah.
Uh, there was a war picture, and it was the bell tolls, and it's
Yeah.
like the bell tolls for me today, but it'll toll for you tomorrow. And then as I got older and seen different things, the person that invented the guillotine got his head chopped off by the guillotine. The person that invented the electric chair, uh, so, and then when you apply that to politics or anything else, you really want to be careful and keep your moral compass.
Mhm. Yeah, and I was saying that I think I like that expression of the moral compass. I think most of us have one, but we don't know how to act out our values in the public sphere. And as a solitary individual, even as a local church pastor, it's difficult to do that on your own because you're taking on much larger entities. One issue that I felt very deeply about is local control for Kansas City Police Department. We're the only municipality in Missouri that does not control our own police, even though we pay several $100 million a year for the police, but they're managed by appointed representatives from the governor of the state. In this case, he's a farmer from Bolivar and doesn't have any urban experience or
Hey,
and he tends not to the Truce line in Kansas City. There's hardly anybody that's appointed east of Truce. It's mostly people in the Brookside and Plaza area who've made donations to Republican causes who end up on our police board. So that means there's a real disconnect between even, and we have many well-meaning police officers in Kansas City. I certainly am not putting a blanket blame on any of them, but there's a disconnect because they don't work for us. They work for
I
the government.
already know. My brother-in-law, Leon Harden, was a crime commissioner. My godfather, crime commissioner, Carl DeCapo.
Yeah.
My other brother-in-law, Ron Harden, retired off the police force.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I just was looking this morning. We used to cover guns and hoses. They would raise money down at Bartle Hall where the police would box the firefighters. So I'm, halfway versed
Yeah.
with and I've stepped on the other side of the law a couple of times, and just being black, you really understand. I tell people, you be black if you've grown up in the urban core, you drive and you always looking for the police. Why would that be? I'm like, that's some stuff that has subliminally been put in your mind behind your environment.
Yeah.
And so now let's talk about what took place yesterday.
Okay.
You had a rally yesterday about somewhat, from my perspective, mixing religion and politics. But I'll let you describe what was going on, and then we'll show a couple of pictures of some of the people that participated.
Well, let me. We did have a rally yesterday, and we're having 7 rallies through this year monthly, and this one was in Clay County in downtown Liberty, kind of off the square on 2 sides. We walked through the square as a part of our demonstration. What we're doing is we have a positive side and we have a resisting side. The positive side is the call of the beloved community. This was Martin Luther King's favorite expression to talk about the kind of society that he wanted us all to live in. And that's a multiracial, multi-faith society where we respect our differences, we're not threatened by our differences, and we learn how to live together in peace and harmony. That's the beloved community, and that's what he kept pointing us toward in his wonderful speeches and life. What we're resisting is white Christian nationalism, which is not a new thing in America, although it is newly coined and has new energy today that it didn't have probably even 8 to 10 years ago. White Christian nationalism it is an effort to have the government state that a particular brand of Christianity, it should get preferential treatment. And they go all the way back to the founding of the country, and they talk about how white Christian men founded this country and wanted to establish Christianity as the religion of the land. And that's simply not true. It is true that the country was founded by white men, but they weren't all Christians. Some of them were deists, and some of them had other beliefs. And what they did, amazingly, they came from state religions in Europe. And when they came over here, they flirted a little bit with that idea, but they finally said, we're not going to be a Christian nation. We're going to be a nation of religious liberty. And everyone is free to form their own faith so that the government doesn't finance religion and religion doesn't have preferred state status in the government. This is kind of a messed up way of thinking, white Christian nationalism, that a conservative form of I don't want to call it evangelical because that's not what it is, but what they're really doing is kind of, it's a partisan political movement. It's white people who feel that they use the term replacement a lot, that they're being replaced by persons of color or replaced by immigrants or refugees or men replaced by women. And they don't know how to live in that world. And because they don't know how to live in that world, they've been kind of attracted to this white Christian nationalist, which once continued preferential treatment for white people as if that's a new thing, that kind of been around since our founding. They want
oh, funny.
they want preferred treatment for white men. Again, that's nothing new in that. They want preferred treatment for Christianity as a state religion. So all of this kind of comes together. The problem is that when you look at Jesus of Nazareth and his values and what he stood for, and when you look at white Christian nationalists, they're exact opposites of it, polar opposites of each other. For example, white Christian nationalists are more than ready and able to pick up arms and defend themselves. And we saw it on the January 6th insurrection. We saw it in Charlottesville, other places where we've seen white Christian nationalists pick up arms and take action of violence. That's opposite of Jesus. Blessed are the peacemakers. You just can't get there from Jesus. Also, they want privilege for themselves. And if there's anything, Jesus easily could have gotten out of hanging on the cross. He could have just gone up to Galilee, quieted himself down for a few months, let everything roll over, and he could have maybe had another couple of decades of life. But he didn't seek any preferential treatment. And he said to his disciples, take up your cross. You're going to be the same place I am. You're not going to get any preferential treatment. So this whole idea that followers of Jesus would somehow have preferential treatment in American society is so far off from Jesus. I always tell people, just read the Beatitudes. And if your idea of Jesus is consistent with what you read in the Beatitudes, you're probably on the right track. And if you're reading Beatitudes and they are the opposite of what you believe to be true, then at least don't call yourself a follower of Jesus. If you want to have those values, that's your business, but they aren't, that does not reflect him. So the statistics have shown, and research into white Christian nationalists has shown, they're not necessarily church-going people. They're more cultural Christians. They kind of dress themselves up looking like Christians, but they're not teaching Sunday school and going to Bible studies every week. Now, these are generalizations. There obviously are people who do that, but by and large, the majority of them do not, and they're really not talking about getting back to Jesus and his values. What they're talking about is a protection for things that they have taken for granted all their lives, which is that white people do have preferred status, white males do have preferred status. And, at one time, probably in the 1950s, something of a majority of Americans probably did consider themselves Christian. But today, that's no longer the truth. We live in a multiracial, multicultural, multi-faith society, and we could no more go back to what white Christian nationalists want. It would take extreme acts of violence and really just taking apart our society. And they white Christian nationalists want an authoritarian type government, an authoritarian type leader who decides for people what's best for them. And so that's why we're resisting it. We see it in this election. We see it nationally. We see it in the Senate race in Missouri. We see it in the Secretary of State, the government's races, the school boards, the library thing, all around. It's not just one national issue. It's everywhere we see. If we elect the wrong people as Secretary of State in Kansas and Missouri, they could do damage to our voting and our electoral process. If we get the wrong people in as governor, the same thing. Wrong people in the Senate and the wrong people in Congress. So what we're doing is we're not telling people to vote for her. Use your brain, but we are saying vote for people who represent the call of the beloved community. Vote for people who have those values, and don't vote for people who support white Christian nationalism, because it's not in the best interest. It's really hard on Christian pastors, this movement of those of us who don't support it, which would be by far the biggest majority, because people hear white Christian nationalism, they hear the talk of it, they have the headlines, and unfortunately, we don't have the headlines, and so people assume that we're for men in patriarchal authority. We're for white people having continued privilege. It's really hard to convince people, no, that's not what we're about. We're about the exact opposite of that.
All right. Real short answer. What do you think is the root cause?
Fear.
All right. That was now because I'm going to add my little 2 cents.
All right.
The problem is people don't know their history. Less more know their Bible. I'm talking about the history of mankind.
Right.
And when you talk about this country, the first man to die, and when we bucked the Boston Tea Party and all of that, was a black man. Black people are the one who invented Memorial Day. And Black people are the ones who built this country. Less more white supremacy. And so when you know your history, and not just American history, you realize that all mankind comes from Africa. No matter what color you are, if you're a human being.
Right.
And that comes with education. And education will have you thinking different, bringing this full circle with your organization and what you represent. That you are saying you cannot hijack what's real and now use it in a way. And all of that comes from dumbing down America.
Yeah.
And it comes down to trying to force your beliefs on everyone. And at the end of the day, this is my personal opinion. All religions, when you look at them, that have prospered, they all were about the sword. Either you submit or you die. And if you look at your history, you'll see. So, with me saying that, I'd like for you to close out on what you would like to close out with our audience.
We would love for you to join us in these monthly rallies. The next one is on Thursday, July 18th at noon in Olathe, in the county courthouse square there. The next one's in Platte County. We're going everywhere. As some places that are a little less supportive, perhaps, than others. But we'd love to have you join us. It's open, it's free for anyone. And it's one way to kind of express your values, that you don't want to return to an autocratic society. You don't want to return to the old ways of America where white men did have privilege over everyone else. We want to live in a society. I'm a white man. I want to live in a society where everyone has equal opportunity, equal promise, and we respect and celebrate the fact that we're different from each other, but we're also brothers and sisters when it comes down to the core of it all. We're not all we're different, but by definition, we're human beings, and we come, in my belief, from the same God, who is the creator of all of us, and that makes us brothers and sisters in one human family. And we've got to quit trying to seek preference for my kind or your kind, and just say, let's live together in harmony and let's respect each other. That's the message that we're trying to get across. And I think it is a critical election. I guess all of them are in one form or another, but this year, this election feels maybe different and a little bit more important than others, because I think the call of the beloved community, this idea that we're all brothers and sisters, we can live together in harmony, is up for grabs. And if we turn the wrong direction out of this election, that vision could be dead and dormant, at least for the near future. And white Christian nationalism, if it succeeds in this election cycle to come out on top, we're not going to recognize America as we've known it, particularly the idea of religious liberty, where everyone is free to worship or not worship as their heart leads them.
Well, my concern, and I've been trying to raise the alarm with my political associations, that there are 100 different issues from religion to whatever, but I'm concerned about us losing our democracy.
I am too.
And it's not really a democracy, plutocracy. Call it what the hell you want to call it, but I'll tell you this: you live under one of them strong men like that, Putin,
Yep.
or some of these other people. You'll wish that you were where you're at now. Also, to the right, I'm saying this: you need to take a lesson from Germany.
Yes.
Because after the war, you can talk to the public. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't, and that's where you're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, with how we close on all our shows, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
My name is Pastor Stephen Jones. I am associated with More Squared, which represents the Metropolitan Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. And we are now in a campaign throughout this election year called the Call of the Beloved Community. This was Martin Luther King Jr.'s basic vision for America, America that celebrates diversity and the differences that we share as brothers and sisters to one another. And we are also working to resist white Christian nationalism, which we feel is a distortion of the values of Jesus of Nazareth and do not accurately reflect what he represented in his life. We're urging people to vote not for an authoritarian government, but for a government that gives voice to everyone, and for religious liberty to continue as the law of this land. Hello, my name is Pastor Stephen Jones. I am connected with the More Squared, the Metropolitan Organization for Racial and Economic Equity, and I support block voting and group economics. I think voting is very important in our society. In Kansas City, we have one of the lowest voting percentages in the state of Missouri. We need to do better than that in this election. Please vote.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.